So, hello everybody. Today we are discussing our 31st book in the book club. Feels really good as always. So, the book for today is A Coffin for Dimitrios. It's by Eric Ambler. So, let's begin. We'll see a bit about the author, about the book, the appreciation for the book, and some of the common themes which are handled by Ambler. And we'll also be touching upon a little bit about the places mentioned here in the book and some themes which are in the book. And finally, we'll end with our quotes. So, Eric Ambler is a British novelist. He began his writing career in the early 1930s and he quickly established a reputation as a thriller writer of extraordinary depth and originality. He is often credited as the inventor of the modern political thriller. John Le Carre once described him as the source on which we all draw. So initially in his spare time, he was actually working in an engineering company and then he was working also in an advertising company. And in his spare time, he had this ambition of becoming a playwright and he used to work on that. In 1936, his first novel was published and soon his reputation as a novelist grew. And after which he quit all other jobs and he turned to writing full time. During the war, he also served in the army and he was seconded to the army film unit. In fact, Coffin for Dimitrios was published in 1939, which was just, before the World War II. So Eric Ambler actually played a very vital role in the World War. And he was a part of the army film unit and he had contributed a lot in that. So he moved to Hollywood in 1957 and his 11 years there, he scripted some very memorable films, including A Night to Remember and The Cruel Sea, which won him an Oscar nomination. In a career spanning over 60 years, he wrote 19 novels and was awarded the Crime Writers Association Gold Dagger Award for Passage of Arms in 1960. He was married to Joan Harrison, who wrote or co-wrote many of Alfred Hitchcock's screenplays. In fact, Hitchcock organized their wedding. Eric Ambler died in London in October 1998. His wife had passed away just 4 years before him. Ambler was actually politically, he was a staunch anti-fascist and like many others, he tended to regard the Soviet Union as the only real counterweight to the fascist aggression, which was reflected in the fact that some of his early books included Soviet agents depicted positively and as sympathetic characters. And they were the undoubted allies of the protagonist. However, like many like-minded people from different countries, Ambler was shocked and disillusioned by the German-Soviet Pact of 1939. So his post-war anti-communist novel Judgment on Delchev, which was published in 1951, was based on the Stalinist purge trials in Eastern Europe. And this caused him to be reviled by many former Communist Party and other progressive associates. Eric Ambler is generally credited with having raised the thrillers to the level of literature. He brought intellectual substance to the genre at a time when it often suffered from shortages of surprise, maturity, verisimilitude, and literary skill. Now, Eric Ambler is synonymous with novels of suspense, action, adventure, and intrigue in foreign lands. So his book actually became models for generations of other writers, especially those who wrote spy thrillers. So many authors of international thrillers have acknowledged a debt to Ambler, including Graham Greene, Ian Fleming, John Le Carre, Julian Simons, Alan First, and Frederick Forsyth. Eric Ambler is considered the father of crime realism. So this is a quote by Eric Ambler. He says, Dorothy Sayers had taken the detective story and made it literate. Why shouldn't I do the same with spies? Also, he tries to bring detail to his books, and this is something that he speaks about in one of his interviews. It is not absolutely necessary that one listens to the words. Sometimes the music that comes through is enough. It can be as little as the faint pain in a man's eyes as he remembers something he is not telling you. So, today we are seeing the book A Coffin for Dimitrios, which was written by him. It's considered Ambler's best book, but there are many other reviews which say that no, there are certain books which are even better than this. But definitely A Coffin for Dimitrios is one of the most popular of all his books. So The Mask of Dimitrios, it was published in the US as Coffin for Dimitrios. Everywhere else in the world, it was Mask of Dimitrios. It's a 1939 novel. Ambler's discussions with Turkish exiles in Montparnasse provided some of the inspiration for the book. The character Charles Latimer also features in The Intercom Conspiracy, which is also another book by Ambler. Similarly, I think even Colonel Haki also appears in another one of his novels. A little bit of the background of the book. So this is very beautifully and well, told by this American author called Bill Coffin. He has written a nice review for A Coffin for Dimitrios, and there he mentions a little bit about the background of this. So I've just picked up his review for us to have a look at it. So in the book, it says ISIL. So ISIL immediately reminds one of ISIS, but actually the L here is not related to ISIS. It's L here stands for 11th. So what is the 11th? 11th is, it is the once fashionable term for the countries of the Eastern Mediterranean Rim, comprising ancient Canaan and Asia Minor. So these are Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey. Add to this the Lebanon's primary areas of influence, which is Cyprus, Greece, the Balkans, and you have the core of Muhammad II's first caliphate. For centuries, the area where, for good and ill, the Islamic Near East opened itself to the West. So this was the passageway to the West. And today, bringing back to the L in ISIL, it is the western boundary of what the so-called Islamic State consider their rightful sphere. So these are the words of Bill Coffin. Continuing his review, he says from the early 20s until the end of the 30s, the time period of Eric Ambler's Dimitrios, there was little talk of radical Islam in the Levant. So there wasn't any radical Islam at that period. Not surprising, given the heavy hand of the secularist Turkish state. But there was plenty of ethnic cleansing, ideological conflict, political assassination, and crime. Turks slaughtered Armenians, capitalists battled socialists, prime ministers were assassinated, drugs, women, and state secrets were bought and sold. And the fascists and communists, delighting in the general unrest, took advantage wherever they could. Perhaps even more frightening were those individual psychopaths, the fixers, the brokers, the bankers, amoral entrepreneurs who exploited even the fascists and communists and always seemed to come out on top. So The Mask of Dimitrios is a book about such a man. That is, our Dimitrios is exactly such a man. So I think it's a very, very, very well-written view of, at a glance, of the entire historical background and the geographical background of the book. So in this historical background and the geographical background is where we find our Dimitrios. So continuing with it, so what makes this book special? What is the reason for the popularity of A Coffin for Dimitrios? So this novel is considered as one of the first postmodern works for its themes of social alienation, the construct of narrative and truth, and the instability of identity, especially this instability of identity, and has been actually first initially been done in this book. And it has served as a source of inspiration for many more books which has come in the same genre or in similar genres later. And the climax of the book is considered very satisfactory for that period. And it also has a very ironic and mundane ending where Latimer once again resumes his life in England writing detective fiction. So that's another, very interesting and a very simple way in which he finishes the book after the, extreme climax which happens. So since a few of you haven't read it, I'll not go too much into it. I don't want to give any spoilers. Um, and another thing about the book is as Latimer journeys from Istanbul to Athens, from Geneva to Paris, he interviews people who have known Dimitrios, and each one, the left-wing journalist, the female cafe owner, the master spy, the human trafficker, each of them has a story to tell. And not only is each of the settings for each of these characters, from the sleazy Athens cafe to a Swiss mountain villa, each of them is perfectly realized. But also, each subsidiary narrator's voice is also individualized, which is something very special for that period. It was published in 1939. And many of these, narrators also comment ironically about the principal narrator, that is Latimer's naivety and what is his questionable motives and all that. So always there's that suspense of what is Latimer's motive? Why is he doing this? Isn't this too much for an author to do just for curiosity? And that kind of suspense keeps on building in the entire novel. So it gives it a nice depth and breadth, and makes the book move really fast, in fact. And another special thing about the book is that though it's classified as a spy novel, it had the pacing and the intrigue of the detective noir novels of the same time period. So it was considered more as a hybrid of the two, and it works well. So Ambler's writing is deep and intelligent. The placing more emphasis on deep characters at the expense of any exciting thrills. But still, he was been retaining some very tense moments, making for an authentic, British crime classic. There's a very slow unfolding of secrets, and there's a lot of focus on the place and the atmospherics. However, this has also been one of the major criticism about the book by most of the modern readers, who find it extremely slow, and especially now that we've been spoiled with some of the greatest fast-paced, gripping thrillers. I think Dimitrios comes across as a very, very slow and a passive book in that sense. There's been a lot of appreciation for the book. So Wall Street Journal called it a startling, elegant masterpiece of espionage fiction. The Pickwick described it as a first-rate book with lucid prose, complex characters, and a well-structured plot. It rated the book a 9.5 out of 10. The crime fiction website Crime Reads, the editor and columnist Neil Niren said, I worked with many writers of international suspense, and whenever I wanted to recommend a book to any of them that captures the genre as well as any book possibly can, this is the one I send them to. The book has been adapted as a radio play, and it has also been made into a feature-length film called The Mask of Dimitrios. However, the film has only a 3-star rating, unlike the book, which has a 5-star rating. So another interesting thing was that after the popularity of Dimitrios, Eric Ambler had been often asked to produce another Dimitrios, and it's said that his ruthlessly clear brain led him to reject endless appeals from publishers and film producers to produce another Dimitrios. So he said there's only one Dimitrios and he's there, so I'm not doing him again. So some interesting things about Eric Ambler's books, and what makes most of his books stand out, and is that in contrast to most other spy novels which were published before his, the protagonists in Ambler's novels are rarely professional spies, policemen, or counterintelligence operatives. For the first time, it was Ambler who had, amateurs who were spies, who were finding out the truth. So they found themselves unwillingly in the company of hardened criminals, revolutionaries, or spies. So the protagonist usually begins out of his death, a bumbling anti hero, surprised to find himself facing extreme danger, who nonetheless eventually manages to surprise himself as well as the professionals with a decisive action that outwits his far more experienced opponents. And we see this in A Coffin for Dimitrios too. So there's many instances where Latimer wonders, oh, Latimer's scared of Dimitrios, he's scared of what's happening, and he feels this is not something that he could handle. Another recurring plot element in most of Ambler's books is statelessness and exile. So, characters who are exiled from their homelands or who face the danger of being exiled and not granted residence in any country. We also see this theme touched upon in Dimitrios too. So, where I think Dimitrios also takes the citizenship of a South American country or something like that. So, there's one interesting situation which comes. So, they just have that citizenship as a backup, that in case they can't stay anywhere else, then at least we have this place where we can go to. Okay, so let me stop the screen share, and you can share your views, and then we'll see the quotes in the end. So hi Ranjini, good to see you.
Hi, just joining to listen.
Okay. So you haven't read, right, Ranjini? You haven't read the book, right?
No, I haven't. I've been.
Okay. So it had that. It was interesting. It was a nice book. It moved fast, but of course, it was published in 1939, and it has served as the inspiration for so many books which was come after that, and so many movies too. So some of the elements probably feels a little too familiar for us to be surprised, I guess.
And this is a very popular genre right now. Everyone wants a piece of the action.
Right. Yes, Shamal Raoji, you had wanted to share something about from your reads, right? You had some notes. Uh, Shamal Raoji, you're there? Yes.
I got it unmuted.
Yeah.
There was one quote actually in chapter 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I already said actually, for one reason or other, I could not complete the book. That is a separate thing I should be doing it. When we take it as a thriller, okay. But even though there is a what we call a pearl of wisdom or something like
Yeah. Many
that.
places, in fact, like that. There's some very
Actually,
nice
it
quotes.
appears, it appears in chapter 5. In a dying civilization, political prestige is the reward, not of the shrewdest diagnostician, but of the man with the best bedside manner. Is the decoration conferred on mediocrity by ignorance. Yet these remains one sort of political prestige that may still be worn with a certain pathetic dignity. It is that given to the liberal-minded leader of a party of conflicting doctrinaire extremists. He brings out a lot of political philosophy in it, extended at that period of time.
Hmm. Yes.
And his dignity is that of all doomed men. For whether the two extreme proceed to mutual destruction or whether one of them prevails, doomed he is either to suffer the hatred of the people or to die a martyr.
Hmm.
I found this is a little out of the way than the main story because it is a political commentary and political structure at that moment of time in
Hmm.
history. As you just said, the authoritarianism and so many things and the political killing, drugs, so many things were there at that time. This is a very good commentary of civilization of that period. That's what I found.
Correct. Very true. And
And there was another quote also. The Colonel Heike says, the important thing to know about an assassination was not who had fired the shot, but who paid for the bullet?
Who paid for the bullet?
That is,
I have,
this is a good quote. Yes.
yes.
These are the two things I found with my what I feel as I have submitted. I could not, for one reason or other, complete reading the book. I fell sick in the meanwhile, and I shifted from to back to India and other things. But I shall promise I will
Yes,
complete it.
yes. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll share the screen and we can look at the quotes. There were some very interesting quotes from the book. A man's features, the bone structure, and the tissue which covers it are the product of a biological process. But his face he creates for himself. It is a statement of his habitual emotional attitude, the attitude which his desires need for their fulfillment and which his fears demand for their protection from prying eyes. He wears it like a devil mask, a device to evoke in others the emotions complementary to his own. If he is afraid, then he must be feared. If he desires, then he must be desired. It is a screen to hide his mind's nakedness.
So is it because it is not a mask for
Yeah,
Dimitrios?
that is why it's called as a mask for Dimitrios.
Ah,
Yeah,
that word mask actually, maybe it might have come from this quote.
correct. The important thing to know about an assassination or an attempted assassination is not who fired the shot, but who paid for the bullet.
Ah, yes. That is
It's a
Colonel Heike.
very correct. And
Again, that
always those
Colonel
who have
Heike
fired
says.
the shot get, even if there is a punishment, it's only for those who fire the shot. We should actually have a punishment for who paid for the bullet, in fact, right?
Paid for the bullet. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So in a dying civilization, political prestige is a reward, not of the, this is what you had shared now, right?
Exactly,
Not
ma'am.
of the shrewdest diagnostician, but of the man with the best bedside manner. It is the decoration conferred on mediocrity by ignorance. Yet there remains one sort of political prestige that may still be worn with a certain pathetic dignity. It is that given to the liberal-minded leader of a party of conflicting doctrinaire extremists. His dignity is that of all doomed men. For whether the two extremes proceed to mutual destruction or whether one of them prevails, doomed he is either to suffer the hatred of the people or to die a martyr. The duplicity of others must always be shocking when one is unconscious of one's own. The situation in which a person, imagining fondly that he is in charge of his own destiny, is in fact the sport of circumstances beyond his control, is always fascinating. Did I read it out correctly? The situation in which a person, imagining fondly that he is in charge of his own destiny, is in fact the sport of circumstances beyond his control, is always fascinating. Governments had risen and fallen. Men and women had worked, had starved, had made speeches, had fought, had been tortured, had died. Hope had come and gone, a fugitive in the scented bosom of illusion. Men had learned to sniff the heady dream stuff of the soul and wait impassively while the lattes turned the guns for their destruction. And through those years, Dimitrios had lived and breathed and come to terms with his strange gods. One goes through life like a flower with its face turned to the sun, ever seeking, ever hoping, wanting to trust others, but afraid to do so. How much better if we trusted one another, if we saw only the good things, the finer things in our fellow creatures. How much better if we were frank and open, if we went on our ways without the cloak of hypocrisy and lies that we wear now. Yes, Mr. Latimer, most of us go through life without knowing what we want of it. But Dimitrios, was not like that. Dimitrios knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted money and he wanted power. So one of the very beautiful things about
This
the book has been, that they have never tried to explain or justify or give a sad story of this is what Dimitrios' past was, or this is why he became such a hardened criminal, or something like that. So that was, considering how much we go in depth into his character, that was something very different for the time period, it seems. So, because usually always the villain, if we go too much into the villain's character in any other crime fiction, then they try to give a sad picture of he was so and so because of so and so reasons, which has not been done for
Yes.
Dimitrios. You never know what is his past or whatever. He is
Exactly.
only shown as this hardened criminal, and he is this hardened criminal. That's it.
Exactly. Dimitra never makes a personal appearance.
Yeah.
We only know about him for multiple characters, multiple situations. And thereby it helps a reader to build up the character of Dimitrios. He never makes his presence felt.
Yeah.
Someone speaks about him, someone comments about him, someone explores about his absence or death or something like that.
Yeah.
We know about him from others, never from
Correct.
him. That is a
Yeah.
beauty. That is
Yeah.
I find that is a
And
technique.
they have kept it, till the end. It's like
Ah,
you never know anything about, like, from a certain time period, we come to know about he did this, he did that, and all that stuff. But we don't know anything before that. They never try to justify, oh, he
No,
had maybe a bad childhood, or oh, he suffered so much, or he was in poverty, or that's why
no,
he did this. Nothing. There's
no.
never anything like that. It's
No.
always like,
And he appears to be painted in a very heroic manner.
mm,
That is
that's
also a thing.
yeah. So that was something new for that time period, especially.
Exactly.
Yeah. And yes, today's presentation has been quite short.
So we can finalize the next book, ma'am,
Yeah, sure.
or you will be waiting for a few more votes to come.
We can wait for maybe another couple of days. Shall we wait till this
Yes,
weekend? Maybe we'll
definitely,
just wait.
because Amazon says
What are
5
the
book, of course.
choices?
So we chose 4 books, Ranjini. All 4 are the either shortlisted or longlisted for the Booker Prize 2023.
Oh, new book.
All new books. So I coined a term called recent classics.
You're hoping they'll become a classic. Not all bookers become classic.
But all of them are really have some very, very interesting and blurbs, at least. I'm not sure how it is. And like I was just telling Shamal Raoji, Pearl, the one, I have it right now with me. It comes very highly recommended. And the other one, which I think Shamal Raoji has voted for, is also comes very highly recommended, in fact. So there are some very, very interesting and different and good reads with interesting storylines too. So let's see.
Are they big books?
No, they are all like 250 to 300, maximum 300. I think most of them are 200, 250, 270 or something like that.
I am not very fond of bookers. I don't think, okay, maybe God of Small Things was okay, I would say. But I haven't.
Most of them were good. Come on. This one was also very
tried
good.
to
What
post
was
those
that?
4 books, madam. Madam, I tried to
Oh,
post
yes,
those
you
4
have
books.
shared. These are the 4
I
books.
think I think that I'm correct. Actually, you may kindly check up
Yes, I'll just check it.
whether I got the spelling right or not.
Oh,
These are the 4 books, madam.
Okay.
I voted for Paid. I'm sorry, Prophet Song. Madam
Prophet
voted for Paid.
Yeah, I had voted for. I couldn't vote because I start the poll, but if I had voted, I would have voted for Pearl.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a very good. All 4 are equally good.
Yeah, all 4 are equally good, in fact.
One
Actually,
competes with the other.
Ranjini, many of the, not all, but many of the bookers are not readable also. I agree with you completely. But some of them are really nice, Ranjini. Some of them which we have read in the book club are also very good.
Which ones?
Neil Mukherjee's.
The
Neil
Lives of
Mukherjee's
Others.
was absolutely wonderful. It's one of my all-time favorites. And
I find Booker's very formulaic. Like you have to basically pick a current theme and set it against a historical background. And
now
there's a lot of wokeness, or
uh,
it has to be political
so
against the backdrop of a.
so
like
from
either
what
it
I
has to
can
be-
see, these books are not like that.
Yeah.
Pearl
Or
is
it's like
definitely not.
extremely sad. The winner. Otherwise, it's extremely sad. It's like, okay, I think there's enough sadness in the world. But yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
I
you
haven't
know,
mentioned this yet.
I know we've had this discussion before, and that the other day I was seeing this quote that you know, maybe I should stop our recording and then we'll continue our conversation. So I had seen this